Man. Thanks everyone for coming tonight to Plight of the Tiger, the big C word, commodification of a giant. Folks, my name is Jim Pollard. I'm helping the board with programs this year. I'm a former Nation reporter, although the Nation is not long for this world, very sadly. It's got about 9 days to go before they cease publication. I just want to tell you about a couple of other programs that we've got coming up. Friday morning, we've got Anne Frell coming, 10:30 a.m. They're going to give you their rundown on the election, what they thought of it, and they're a professional group that works all over the world. What they have to say will be very interesting. Monday night, there's a documentary, Vivienne Westwood, punk, icon, activist. 7 o'clock. She was, I don't know much about Vivienne Westwood, but she was associated with the Sex Pistols, I believe. Is that right, Michael? Yep. Okay. Now, we come to tonight's program. We've got a good panel, a strong panel here, who are going to offer 4 different perspectives of different aspects of the wildlife field. Frankly, this sector is one that has always been a little bit troubled in this part of the world. Anyway, tonight's event is on tigers, and that is just one of numerous areas the wildlife field that is a little bit troubled. We're going to start with Tim Redford, the second man in here in the grey shirt. He's the Program Director, Training Coordinator of Freeland. You might know him also from his former jobs at Poo and Pa, Friends of the Forest, or Wild Aid. Anyway, he's a veteran in this field, as is Edwin in the black shirt, fair hair. Edwin's a fairly well-known figure. Edwin's Dutch. He is the founder and director of the Wildlife Friends Foundation of Thailand down at Petbury, close to Gengajan, okay, where he has a rescue facility, which is, I was there on the weekend, it's a magnificent site. We've also got Somsak. Now I better get your surname right. Sunthorn Pawat. Okay. Okay, from the World Animal Protection Group, and he will be speaking third. And then here we have Chris Perkin. Chris is from the UK Border Force. He's the regional manager for Thailand and Central Asia. They're all going to give a perspective, and a presentation with Danny at the end. She'll be flicking up the screen so you get a good idea of what they're saying. And then we're going to open the floor for questions. So there will be a microphone in the centre of the floor there. And if you can just tell us who you are, your name and your group, wherever you're from, before you ask a question, that would be great. Okay, we're about to start now. Tim, let's go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jim. Just waiting for my PowerPoint. There we go. Good evening, everybody. One of the things I'd like to just reaffirm before we start this, actually, the problem we're talking about is not just tigers. It's all big cats, and it's worldwide. So the problems facing these large carnivores is pretty similar across the board, whether it's in Thailand or India or Africa. And worryingly, across Southeast Asia, leopards are disappearing very rapidly. And so I want you to bear this in mind when we talk about all these different aspects of tiger conservation tonight. And bear in mind that if we don't do something very soon, certainly some of these species will be blinking out and they'll be becoming extinct. So this initial picture here was made, it's a montage of some of our camera trap pictures from where we've been doing surveys of tigers in Thailand here. Oops, it's not working, there we go. So what I'm trying to do here is just set the scene a little bit about tigers and how things have changed over the last few years. In some aspects they've improved, but in most aspects of tigers conservation they haven't improved at all. That's the previous range of, technology defeats us. Right, that was the previous range of tigers. You can see they're all the way from the north in the Russian Far East all the way down to Indonesia, and they used to go down as far as Bali, and the 3 subspecies in Indonesia have gone extinct, leaving just 1 behind. And the darker red areas are where the tigers are now, and this is how it was in 2014 in Southeast Asia. Tigers were quite scattered, and it looked as if, you know, there were some opportunities for them to breed and they would maintain themselves. But this is how, let's try this again. Go on, Edwin, 1 tap there. And this is how it, no. There we go. This is how it was in 2014. So just, 5 years ago. The situation is even worse than this now. The blob you see on the right-hand side in northern Laos, there's no tigers there anymore. And in the top of Myanmar, you can see in the Hawking Valley, that had quite a healthy tiger population in 2014. I believe there might only be 2 left there now. So the landscape is changing very rapidly. There we go. This is a snapshot of what's happening across the 13 range states. Arguably, there are 14 if you believe North Korea, but I think that's probably unlikely. You can see on the right-hand side all these red arrows facing downwards. This is a downward trend in those populations. And in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, there are no tigers anymore. If there are, there might be 1 or 2, but there's certainly no viable breeding populations. We can see in a couple of countries, China, it's increasing, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Russia. Thailand, India, Bhutan, Myanmar, we haven't got any recent census results, so we don't know quite what's happening, so that's stayed level there. I can say in Thailand, about 25 years ago, there were more than 20 forest complexes with tigers. That's down to maybe 3 now. So things are looking very bleak for tigers. And we can see, though, in India, where they've invested a lot of money, the population has increased a little bit over the last 4 years or so. And so you can see the figures have gone up in 2010 from, there were about 3,000, and now it's 3,200, and now 3,890. And that's largely down to India's investment in tiger conservation. There is some good news here in Thailand. There are tigers still breeding here. This is only about 3 or 4 hours from Bangkok. So it's not a lost cause completely yet, so it's well worth trying to keep this charismatic species as long as we possibly can. Oops. And the picture in the box there, that was 2 cubs from just about 2 months ago. So they are breeding, and they are growing up, and they are establishing territories in areas where 5 or 10 years ago, there were no tigers. So in some places in Thailand, things are definitely improving. And this is because of a lot of investment from conservation organizations and a lot of work from the Royal Forest Department before and the Department of National Parks now. Won't go. There we go. So I'm going to talk about a few problems very quickly which tigers are facing across their ranges. And this Belt and Road Initiative from China with roads, railways, is dividing all of these last forest complexes into small fragments. And fragmentation of tiger habitat, and for any wildlife, not just tigers, hastens their demise. And so where we've got tigers now, we might not have in years to come. For example, you can see from Thailand through into Myanmar, they're building a railway system and they're going to build a big road system. That's going to be dividing the Tenasserums into two, which is one of the last major tiger habitats through Myanmar. And you can see there's the road at the top there. That's the road to Dawei for the deep sea port that's being constructed. The picture in the middle is a railway tunnel coming from China into Laos, and one of the dams on the Mekong there as well. All of these are putting barriers in the way of tiger dispersal. Oops. Okay. So the other sort of problems that we're facing are wildlife poaching. We've got migratory poachers now. These poachers are traveling all across Southeast Asia. They're going from Vietnam as far down as Sumatra to hunt tigers. There are many of them in Malaysia. And if you go into a Malaysian forest, such as Taman Negara, you'll see Lao and Thai and even Vietnamese writing carved into the trees as these poachers mark out their hunting areas. So lots of problems going on. Well-armed poachers as well. You see the guy in the picture there with an AK-47, not just the guy with long guns. One of the biggest problems that I see for tigers is alerting the poachers where are the last remaining tigers. Every government, every NGO, we're all at fault. We want to announce some good news and we want to tell everybody where the tigers are. But this is a problem. Everybody is using smartphones now. A little bit of information written in the English language press soon goes around the world and is translated into numerous languages, and the poachers know exactly where the tigers are. Some people say, well, the poachers know where the tigers are already. Maybe the local poachers do. But there's a supply chain involved here, and there is a missing link between the poachers in the field and the traffickers and the final consumers. And by doing that publicity and social media, we're helping link these people together. So tonight, I'm not going to talk about any areas where tigers are remaining in Thailand. And I'd caution you all, when you're printing something, to try and just be vague about it. Western Thailand, Eastern Thailand, Northern Thailand, something like that, because otherwise we'll find ourselves being part of the problem as well. You see here in the picture from the south, in the bottom left there, that's from Kruger National Park, where poachers were actually looking at geotags in people's Facebook to find out where the rhinos are. I'm sure that's going to be happening for lots of other high-value species like tigers. And it's being documented across Malaysia how social media is guiding poachers in as well. So the other problem we're seeing as well is ecological disturbance. There's a lot of disposable money in Thailand now. People like to go off-roading on a weekend. They like to go hiking in the forest, riding their motorbikes. It's all causing disturbance. It's all damaging, the serene environment that a tiger needs to live in. Furthermore, you've got cattle grazing in protected areas, lots and lots of different problems like you see in these pictures here. And it's something that some people don't think is a problem, but really it is, because areas that we've been doing surveys, where you've got people, you've got very low densities of tigers. Where you've got cattle grazing, low densities of tigers as well. All across tiger range, you've got people looking for ungulates, for deer, for cattle, wild cattle, things that they can sell the meat from. And so you find these snares everywhere. And also you're finding these gun snares are very common in Thailand. They're called jan hao, and they have a tripwire. Rangers, like in the picture there, are getting shot by these when they're out on patrol as well. And here is an actual camera trap picture of a poacher with snares at the same location as a tiger walking by. If you look at the tree in the middle, you'll see the same tree in both photos. It's highly concerning. Thanks. And here we can see some of the damage from snares. This picture on the left was from southern Myanmar about 6 months ago. And there were 2 tigers poached, and 2 of the poachers got caught, and 2 of them just hopped over the border and disappeared into the Burmese population here in Thailand, were never caught. So that's going on. You see the bear up there on the right, he's lost his paw from a snare. And the tiger picture there of a snare as well. One of the other problems here that people don't take seriously is the threat of disease. This is canine distemper virus. About 80% of the lions in Africa have either been poached or died because of canine distemper. It's already documented in India, Indonesia, and there's been cases here in Thailand as well. And it's... Can you tap that one more time, please? It's a very painful death for these animals, and there's no going back from that. Once they get to this stage, they've gone. And so we can preserve all of these tigers in the parks, but if the poachers come in with their dogs, we could lose them all to disease. It's something that is very hard for us to stress to the park management that dogs are dangerous. They really don't get it. So we show this video to them every time we go to parks, and I don't know if it's making any effect, but I hope so. The other problem, if we start to become successful, is wildlife conflict, because in some areas, there's not enough prey for the tigers, so they come out of the park. This picture on the right was actually taken in Thailand, where a tiger's just come out and hunted a villager's cow. And of course, that creates a bad feeling between the villagers, and of course, they want to go out and they've set snares and ways to just rid themselves of the tigers so that they don't lose their livestock. So what do we need to preserve tigers? We need a good plan, and we need resources, and we need strong laws. Luckily, the laws in Thailand have just been revised, and they're a whole lot stronger than they were. There's a good commitment amongst the Thai government to preserve tigers, and the Department of National Park has been doing a really good job here, and that's why Thailand has still got tigers where neighbouring countries no longer have tigers anymore. The action plan is due to be finished in a couple of years, so I hope very soon we're going to be starting work on a new action plan which will bring all the different stakeholders together to plan what we're going to be doing over the next 20 years or so, or 10 years at least, to preserve tigers and make sure that they're kept here in Thai forests. The other thing we can do is train the rangers, and in the parks in Thailand that have got tigers, it's because the rangers have received an awful lot of training, not just initial training, but refresher training again and again. And we've trained units to actually do the training themselves, so it's institutionalized. And now when we're doing training courses, we don't have any foreign experts come in and do it. It's all local rangers and instructors. There's a lot of experience here, and it's being passed over to new rangers regularly. We're also doing training around the region. Some countries are lagging behind a little bit, like Laos and Myanmar. They're wanting to make a difference, but they don't have the resources yet. So Freeland is going in there with other organizations to do training for them. And one of the problems as well is investigations, that the investigators don't have the ability to do proper in-depth investigations. So over the last few years, we've been collaborating with the police, not just here in Thailand, but we've been bringing police experts in. I'm sure Chris will be giving us some information on that as well. And training them on forensics, because now the whole situation has changed. When you catch a poacher, you've got to be able to have the proof to keep him there, because if you just come up with a piece of information, if he's got a good lawyer, he's going to rubbish that and he'll be walking before you know it. So there's a very famous case that's been in the media here with the chairman of a construction company, and it looks like finally that investigations training and support is working. And it's no longer that if you're rich and affluent, you can just pay off a police or a court and walk away. And that's because of good training, especially on evidence collection that proves they were in that place at that time. There are cases still going on. These are cases from Myanmar and from Thailand. The ones in the middle there involve Vietnamese poachers who have come to Thailand to poach. Some of them certainly read about what was going on in Thailand in social media, and they've got no tigers left to poach, so they're still wanting the parts. So the stuff that they can't get from the farms, they're willing to take it from the wild. And one of the things that we've been working on a lot is community outreach, trying to develop the local community to be the eyes and ears of the parks near where they're living, because actually many of these people rely on the parks for the eco-services that they get, such as water and collection of vegetables and mushrooms. They're in the forest collecting these things without hunting or hurting wildlife, such as tigers or their prey. And so we've been going out around the schools around many of these areas and into the local villages, and this is something that we've been working on quite a lot, and I hope that eventually the Thai education system might encompass some of the things that we've been training into the national curriculum, but that's a really big story in itself and something we've not been that successful with so far. So we're still going out around the schools pretty much on a weekly basis, talking about tigers and elephants and why it's important to preserve the forest. So that's a quick snapshot of what we've been doing and what the situation is for tigers. It's all been made possible because of our supporters from around the world. And I just want to say thank you to those. You can see their logos and they know who they are. So thanks, everybody, especially if you're here. All right, thanks. So I'll pass over to Edwin now, and he can talk about tiger farms. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm at Week of the Wildlife Friends Foundation, and I was actually expecting a more positive story from Tim. Lately, the authorities have been talking a lot about the rise in wild tigers in Thailand, and when you take that into consideration, you start thinking about a very positive story. When you see it in this context, actually. It proves that we're actually maybe in getting into a better situation, but not in the right direction yet. So, unfortunately, I don't have much good news either. But I have to say that, at least in Thailand, the history of the tiger trade, the law in Thailand is being changed. You saw earlier a clip, a press clipping from, I think it was February last year. People could actually be jailed for 14 years for poaching, possession of protected wildlife. It hasn't gone that far, not yet, but there are changes upcoming. Currently, all tigers in Thailand are protected under the 1992 Wildlife Preservation Act. The king has signed a new law last month. I think it was the 20th of May, if I'm not mistaken, 22nd of May. And it will take 180 days for this new law to be enforced. However, I see a few issues that are, I consider a problem. Under the new legislation, there's a few very good points. First of all, Section 67 stipulates that the authorities do not only have a criminal case against people possessing or trading or poaching protected wildlife, there's also an option to actually start a civil case against the criminals, and have them pay for the upkeep of the animals. That is, if they are alive and need to be taken care of for the rest of their lives. They can also be fined for the loss of biodiversity, the damage done to nature. So that's quite good. I mean, that can be, in the case of a tiger, for example, from the wild, could be up to 2-3 million baht. I think the maximum is 2 million baht, but that's going to hurt. And I think just like with the war on drugs, if it doesn't hurt, it's not going to stop it. And I think this will be a very good thing. Furthermore, on the sections between 79 and 87, it's very clear that, for example, currently under current law, the maximum fine is 4 years in jail and 40,000 baht fine, which is, in general, on the first arrest, is usually at 30,000 baht fine. If you cooperate, maybe even less, 20,000, and a suspended jail term in many cases. Under the new law, in the case of illegal possession, trade, or poaching, there's a minimum jail term of 3 years with a maximum of 10 years. So there's no suspended jail time possible. You're just going to go at least for 3 years, maximum 10 years. Those things I see as quite positive, and I think that will help, and it will actually deter people from breaking the law in the future, for some of us, not all, but that will be a positive thing. But of course, once people are arrested, once these animals are taken, the damage has been done. The history of tigers in captivity in Thailand starts actually a long time ago. I mean, a lot of people, influential, rich people, used to have wildlife at home. And as Thai people say, "Kan sang barami." It's basically a way of showing power, influence by having dangerous, large, or usually expensive animals at your home. I remember an ex-prime minister of Thailand standing on stage at a CITES conference in 2004 talking about illegal wildlife trade, saying that people trading wildlife should go to jail or even get a death sentence. He himself actually imported a few weeks before that a couple of chimpanzees from Africa and had them at his house in Chiang Mai. I mean, these things were quite normal. In 1992, however, when the first law passed, the Wildlife Preservation Act of 1992, there had to be an amnesty. There were thousands of animals, the authorities thought, we're talking actually about 100,000 of animals, in captivity with people, and around 140 tigers were at the amnesty basically registered with people, private owners. And we're not talking about zoos, we're talking solely people that had tigers at home. In 2003, Thailand was under a lot of scrutiny because of the illegal wildlife trade and possession, and CITES was hosting the 2004 COP of CITES. And to make sure that there couldn't be any accusations of illegal wildlife possession in Thailand, it was a great idea by the government at that time to again order an amnesty. That amnesty got even worse than the 1992 one. 1.1 million 42,000 animals were registered in the 90 days given in August, September, October, if I'm not mistaken, in 2003. Of that, again, 185 tigers were registered by private owners, on top of the ones that were already kept in captivity by private owners from the earlier one. The pictures you see here are some of these facilities, people that have these animals at home. This tiger is at somebody's private home, and because tigers are protected, he's got to be very careful. In this instance, actually, we know that this person is breeding tigers and selling them, but we'll come back to that later. But because tigers only is not enough, it became also quite fancy now to have some lions with it. So you see the picture of the lion cubs higher up in there. Also, with the last 15, 16 years, the tourism is becoming a massive problem. It's not moving. Oh, there goes. So this is one of the images we got from Pattaya. We filmed it last year. I actually posted this video on my Facebook account just to show people, and it was shared, I think, 40,000 times. It was viewed about 6.8 million times. And this was just some of the work we were doing in cooperation with EIA and ENV. The EIA is the Environmental Investigation Agency in the UK, and ENV in Vietnam. with the support from DEFRA in the United Kingdom, the authorities there. So we started visiting all places that had tigers in Thailand. We were told by the authorities that there were about 43, 44 places with tigers, and we wanted to visit them all, and we did over a period of 2 years. This is basically the breeding of cubs to be played with, to be fed milk, later on to make selfies. But what happens to these tigers when they grow up, when they become aggressive and stuff? This is, I think, most of Thailand's most famous or infamous tiger facility, Sriracha. And you see most of the animals are housed in small cages, waiting to be taken out for the show or for selfies until later. And this is the tiger tourism. But behind the scenes, you have facilities like this. Next one. Is it going? Okay, so this is a few pictures just from one facility. We found out many, many more facilities than the 40 plus that we were told by authorities. But when we talk about tiger farming, we continuously hear from the authorities that tiger farming does not exist. Now, this is from one facility only. This is somebody who has no zoo permit. This person has actually only a license to hold 3 tigers. But look what they got. They got the crocodiles, they got cows there, they got chickens, they got tigers, they got lions, lion cubs, even white lions. And some of the footage that we have, which we can actually share with you later on. I can't share everything we have because I still feel that sometimes we got to be a bit careful with slander and other kind of laws. But we can share it with you later. Basically, once the cubs are born, if they're not protected, and don't get me wrong, tigers are protected, but lions are not. So you can have a lion in Thailand still now, and without any consequences. You don't have to register it. Under the new law, yes, but I still see some legal issues there. If you had if you had the lion before the new law came into place. But if we're talking about tiger farming and we say it doesn't exist, I can show you at least 10 more facilities like this, if not more, and it's moving rapidly in another direction. We come later on. The CITES COP in 2007 was held in The Hague, and all range states of tigers have then agreed to sign a resolution, the resolution 14.69, where the commercial breeding had to stop, basically had to be diminished to like the minimum level, basically just enough to preserve tigers, the conservation of tigers. But that was 2007, and when you look further what happened in 2007, you can see here the banning of the commercial breeding. On the left, in 2007, there were 652 tigers in captivity in Thailand in 34 facilities. That's the first chart. In the second chart, you can see the green going up to 1,480. That's in 2009. 2016. Sorry, that's from 2016. The numbers we had. So from just over 600, we went to almost 1,500 in not that many years, in 9 years' time. In 2019, currently, our latest edit, actually, we found 1,998 tigers in captivity in Thailand in 69 different facilities. And if it keeps on going, you see 2022, in 3 years, we'll reach 2,500 tigers if it keeps on going. And you can see the yellow line, that was the forecast that CITES basically made in 2007, saying, well, 650, we stop the commercial breeding, the numbers will go down in about 9 years to about 500, and then later on we go to about 300 to 400 tigers in captivity. That should be enough for education purposes, for regular zoos and the breeding of the ex-situ breeding, which I think for tigers is a discussable point. However, as the yellow line should go, you see the green line going up. Next one. Let's play this one. This is a point that is very considered a big issue. This is the special economic zone near Chiang Rai. This is in Laos. And this area is completely controlled by Chinese investors and even by Chinese politicians. The Lao authorities hardly have any say about what's happening over there. And I would say that this is probably one of the worst places at the moment when it is about tigers in captivity. The video is quite long. It's uploaded onto the internet, so I can share it with you later. But you can see that these facilities, these tiger breeding facilities in Laos, have a huge capacity. This place over here could house easily 400 to 500, maybe 600 tigers. But besides this facility, we recently found a new facility opposite Bung Kan province, which is basically the northeast of Thailand, 4 kilometers, 3 miles from the border in Laos. Another one, Lac Sao, which is about 150 kilometers from the border in Thailand towards Vietnam, another facility with a capacity easily 500-600 tigers or even more. Then there is the infamous Vinasakon tiger farm in Ta Kek. The owner actually just got shot dead a couple of weeks ago, with also a capacity, I would say, easily 400 to 500 tigers. And all these tiger farms are actually popping up at the border between Thailand and Laos. And we'll go to the next one here. The reason why these farms are actually showing up on the side of Laos, over on the northwest or the northeast of Thailand, you can see in 2007 the tiger farms are mostly in the areas where tourists were, and a few exceptions there with small farms and small hunting facilities. But when you look at 2019, you see that in the northeast of Thailand there's more and more facilities with tigers, especially in Mukdahan province, very close to the border. And why is that happening? Well, in the past, and I do have the statistics actually from 2006 to 2016. Over 300 tigers were confiscated in different shipments, live and dead, and most of them were actually confiscated on the way between Bangkok and the northeast. But currently we see that the amount of arrests are going down. Lately, it's a good example. Lately, there was a dead tiger on the way towards the border of Thailand and Laos, and it was stopped around 200 kilometers before it got there. And well, once they got stopped, they basically told police, well, this dead tiger actually belongs to our farm. Our farm is in Pattani, in the south of Thailand. We're bringing it to our other farm in Mukdahan. So by positioning these tiger farms near the border and all around the northeast of Thailand, basically they're making the chance of being caught a lot less. It's much more convenient to have a safe house basically near the border. And our latest visit, for example, in the facility in Mukdahan, didn't show only an amount of tigers that was, I think, over 30, over 40. There were duklangers in there, red-shank duklangers from Vietnam that are been illegally imported into Thailand. They're not protected in Thailand, but they are protected under CITES. There were lions over there and lots of other wildlife that's supposed to be protected. The place has a zoo license, but I don't really see how a facility like that would get any kind of customers, because there's no tourism, hardly any tourism in Mukdahan. So for us, it's more or less a safe house for illegal wildlife trade. Well, although people say that the market is going down, the demand in China for tiger bones is going down and everything, we checked on the database of CITES on the so-called legal lion bone trade. I just put only the imports to Thailand and Laos in a graphic here, and you can see that from 2007 to 2017, over the last 10 years, well, basically these 10 years, and you see that the amount of lion bone, the lion carcasses imported into Thailand and to Thailand and Laos has been massive. I mean, we see there at top of 2015, Thailand importing 118 tigers. Those 118, there was only about 20 live ones. All the other ones were dead ones, basically bone trade. When you look at the number in Laos there, we're talking 520. Now, if you look at those numbers, then you realize that this lion bone trade is massive. And we suspect that in Thailand it is being mixed with tiger bone. It's been confirmed by illegal wildlife traders saying the demand is so high we can't get enough tiger bone, so we're actually adding up the lion bone, and the Chinese consumers seem to have no problem with it, or maybe don't know about it, but it looks quite similar. Well, this video clip here has been edited. It's a long video clip. We're going to show this one. This is a facility in Chonburi where people, or Vietnamese people and Chinese people, visit. Busloads. It's a closed facility. You can't just go in. And this lady over here is talking about the great medical abilities of this medication of tiger bone. She claims in here that it's all backed by the highest institutions and the most powerful people in Thailand. She mentions them by name, actually, which we can't air. And she also tells people that you can take it out of the country. It's illegal, but you can take it out of the country because we're backed by the big shots. And over here, this, she said that, they're paying 3,500 baht for a box, and it's about 300 grams. And if you want to take big boxes, 4 pieces, it's about 600 gram, will be about 7,000 baht, so about $210 each. People can pay in Vietnamese currency. They pack it up nicely for you. You can take it back home, and one of our investigators is here actually saying, well, the color doesn't fit really. Is it really tiger bone? How do we know? We can be sure. And she said, well, it's mixed with herbal, but it's 40% tiger bone what's in there. So they're basically talking to this lady. It goes on. Busloads of people go in there, and we're talking probably 1,000 to 2,000 people a day that go into this facility. We don't know how much they really sell, but it's a massive operation, and we've handed over this video a couple of months ago to the authorities, but unfortunately they say that without more evidence they can't do much. But I would say a video like this is pretty much evidence to me. The Tiger Trade Network, this is from you far away to see, difficult to see, but this is just the ownership and the people behind 4 tiger farms in Thailand. And these are all connected through companies, family members, government officials as well, people in the military, people in the police, but all topped by about 5-6 people. And they have facilities all over the country. I think there are 4 or 5. There seem to be some trouble at the moment about their business, but everybody knows each other. Everybody does business with each other, and even the farms in Thailand that are legal tiger zoos have connections with the ones in Vietnam. That means with ownership. We have been tracking people from Vietnam, from Thailand that have these facilities in their countries, visit other facilities, because what they need is, of course, to get some fresh genetics, and they basically need some other tigers to breed with their captive population. So it's a big network of people. And that's it. I wanted to just touch that illegal trade and the captive breeding of it. So the solution to it, I can unfortunately not give you yet. I think that's very debatable, but that's some of the findings we have over the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edwin. It's very disturbing, the size of that, that underground industry. Kun Somsak, would you like to tell us what you can?
Thanks a lot. That's my one.
No, wrong one.
No. You can talk to that if you want.
Wrong one.
That'll be a challenge. We do each other once next time.
Good idea.
You may have heard some a little bit of drilling earlier, folks. It sounds as though someone was trying to do some renovations downstairs. We sent some people down to tell them to basically shut up, and it looks as though they've done that. So anyway, we hope that will continue.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us for presenting on the tiger aspect here from World Animal Protections. Similar to the issue from Edwin's, where just been talking on the tiger in captivity. And here is my topic today is tiger in tourism, where I will touch a bit for our works, and then the issue of the captive tiger, and then some of the presenting on the aspect of animal welfare on the 5 freedoms. So this is our work, our campaign for the wildlife, for the World Animal Protections. There are different wildlife species where we are campaigning. The first one, wildlife not entertainers. This one is focused on elephants and tigers mostly, and this is the main campaign in Thailand. For elephants, we will move on the policy to ban on the perform of the elephants, and for the tiger, particularly in captive tiger, we will more focus policy on ban on captive tiger breedings. And then the other campaign mostly in the other country where we have our office in the world, and also dolphins will have a campaign in Thailand this year as well. Yep. When we're looking on the tiger in tourists or the wildlife for tourism, actually we have a demand. In Thailand is one of the country that is popular for the tourist destinations, and I can provide some example where I got the information from Ministry of Tourism and Sports, where just an idea for last year, 2018. It was very high number of the tourists came to Thailand, and majority come from East Asia, particularly. Approximately half of East Asia from Chinese tourists, and more increasingly. And also the main the destinations, different destination, but another animal attraction is also one of the destination that on demand from those tourists. Right now, particularly on the elephants, they are favored to riding and see the elephant performs. Actually, right now is approximately 180 elephant venues. Previous slide, please. 180 elephant venues. And then for the tiger venue is referred to the DNP information is approximately 33 tiger parks. And when we're looking at the tourist attractions where they use animal for the tourist attractions, there are different kind of tourist attraction as the links where I have put together here. But the most three top of the animal attractions that most popular for the tourists who come to Thailand, like riding of wild animals, for example, riding elephants, interact or handlings with the wild animals, elephant, tiger, or dolphins, and photo with the animal, like a selfie tiger with a photo, for example. So next slide, please. Then when we are working on the captive animals where they use for the tourism, and the one thing that we try to use for assessment is the 5 freedom for animal welfare, where we are used for access of the how the captive animals, the conditions, or how they are well treated when they are living in the captivity. So including of the freedom from the hunger and thirst, freedom from the pain, injury, disease, freedom from discomfort, freedom from fear and distress, and the last one is freedom for express their natural behaviors. Next slide, please. I think this is for example of freedom from hunger and thirst. When we're looking at the captive tiger here, for example, the water provided to the animals, it look like it's not enough, something like this. This can be considered the freedom for hunger and thirst. Next slide, please. And freedom from pain, injury, and disease, like dancing bear, where in the South Asia, where they in the past used a lot of bear for dancing, so they have hope for put in the nose and control the bear, so that make them for injury. And then the turtle in captivity, this is some example where they are pain or maybe got a disease. Next, please. Freedom from discomfort. When we're looking on the left hand side, the required density of animal there, and then without shades, for example, and then on the right photo, both of them really not comfortable for elephant, where really short chains tied up them in where they are living in a captivity. So next one, please. Freedom to express normal behavior. When we're looking, for example, bear, they love for swimming, they love for climbing to the tree, for sleeping on the tree, something like this. And for elephant, they are a social animal. They need to be together in their families. When they're living in a captivity, they cannot express their natural behaviors. Like elephant in captivity, they need to separate from mother very young age for training, for perform interaction to the tourists. Next one, please. And also this last one, freedom from fear and distress. Some of the showing of how is animal they are distressed when they are been keeping like this. Actually, please play the video, please. It's for the next slide. And could play. Press this slide is some of the playing video. Yeah, this is example of the monkey when they are very fear and distressed, when they keep like this for a long time. For example, they will moving around like this. It's not their normal behavior. It is because from of their distress very much. Next slide, please. So my informations maybe a bit different from Edwin's. So this is referred to the DNP, the Department of National Park, where we got information from them formally by March this year. So total number of captive tiger is 1,570 of them. And they are come from two parts actually. The first part on the top is 1,419. This is from 32 tiger park, where they are registered under the public zoo. So throughout the Thailand they have this number. And on the bottom is 151 tigers. This is from 22 private premise. It's like Edwin explained when his presentation, where the people keep tiger for make them higher power, respect, and something like that. So, but they are not registered as a public zoo, but they have we call a permit from DNP that they can occupy of the protected animals, something like that. So they can have this. This is all the captive tiger from all number from captive tiger in Thailand. Next one, please. When we're looking of the life of the captive tiger, and they use for tourism when newborn, mainly the tourists visit them and feeding, selfie, and living display in the cage, and then performance show, walking with the tiger, just be the like this. So a lifetime in captivity chains forced to interact with the people. There is no life for a wild tiger, so their life totally different when they are living in the captivities. Next one. And the relevant issue for the captive tiger in Thailand, when we're looking at the species, mostly the captive tiger, majority of them, they are not our native species. They are Bengal tiger. I think they are native from the South Asia. And mostly they are farming them and keeping them in a captivity. Therefore, this issue, when they breeding, they are not for the purpose of the conservations. Mostly the purpose is for the commercial breeding of the captive tiger. Therefore, the CITES decisions for Thailand and other countries, for example China, where has a high number of the captive tiger, to keep of the captive tiger, reduce number of them to the level that the country can control, and to avoid involved in the illegal trafficking. And DNP, and DNP also follow the CITES for reduce the number of captive tiger. They are more strict than before. For example, when the farm they have a tiger newborn, they need to inform to the DNP within 24 hours, and then they will come to record and keep DNA of those tiger. And then if some tiger die, they need to inform as well within 24 hours to disposal of the dead body, something like that. This is to keep very tight restriction. Also, they request the tiger farm to separate between male and female, so not allow them to breeding. And by the way, right now there are 4 tiger parks in Thailand. I expect the biggest one as well. One is maybe from Silacha Zoo. So every time we been there, visit there, we can see the newborn every month, every times. The DNP said that they are grant for tiger park to have a permit for breeding. Therefore, the breeding is still going on, and the number is still not reduced. That's why we try to working on policy, how we can reach to the target of the policy that totally ban for the captive tiger breedings. Also, the World Animal Protection report on the wildlife on the Thai rock, we found that over 600 tigers in captivities, they are suffer from tourist activities. And then also the issue may involve with illegal trafficking, like the case of Tiger Temple a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. And this is some of our works to campaign on the policy change. We try to mobilize the public to support our work for policy change on the ban on captive tiger. This is, we expect that the last generation for the captive tiger here is in the captivity, so it's no more for cruelty and no more suffer for those captive tigers. This is from our perspective, from our work, and from World Animal Protection. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we've got Chris to give an outsider's perspective, I suppose, or the UK perspective. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about interdiction, smuggling. Obviously, when it comes to the border, most of the tigers are dead. So, but what I can explain what we try to do to stop the trade. We take it very seriously in the UK, and last year we hosted the Wildlife Trade Conference. We brought together, as you can see, 84 countries, over 1,000 delegates. Our Foreign Secretary opened for the government and committed large sums of money for fighting the illegal trade. And at the end we had the declaration by the countries for collective action, confirming the commitment from the last 3 conferences. And from this part of the world, we had a commitment from, as you can see, Cambodia, China, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore and Thailand. And whilst we're not so naive as to realise that signing a piece of paper makes things happen, that was very positive. We take it very seriously. We realise we can't work not only on our own in the UK, but also abroad. So in the UK, we involve all our law enforcement agencies in fighting wildlife crime. These are our priorities. When I was thinking about this, obviously medicinal and health products. This is a place where the tiger bone is used. And it's not just packaged as conventional medicines. You'll actually see, I've got some more of those packaging. It looks more like bodybuilders' packaging, when in actual fact, a lot of it is tiger bone, rhino horn, etc. We take it seriously. This is a 1 month intensification that we had with the World Customs Organization and Interpol. We had our colleagues from Canada come over to watch us for a month, and these are the countries that participated in the 1 month IWT intensification. We, at the airports, we involve the airlines and all of the workers at the airport. We can't work in isolation. We need assistance from anyone from the baggage handlers to the airline check-in staff. I make no apologies. We use the royals as much as we can. Here we have Prince Charles. He's a very good supporter of ours, and when we had our conference, he came along with Prince William, and that gives us a tremendous amount of publicity in the UK. They are really staunch supporters of ours. Rhino, horn and pangolin is something we see regularly in the UK. Ivory, of course. This was a case with the Belgians that we saw this in transit, and we informed the Belgians. And when they went to the address, I think about 40 or 50 kilos of ivory were taken out. This is herbal supplements, and again, when you look at it, you think these are bodybuilding kits, don't you? But they're not. This is actually using bones, horn, etc. So it's one of the things that we train our officers to look for. That's quite obvious what that is. This is, we put this in because it's part of the illegal wildlife trade. Eels, you might not really think about this, but this is a very big trade from Europe to here. And you can see this one consignment was worth over £1 million sterling. So we've been working with our Thai colleagues to look out for this. This is something we've tried to make them aware of. Our day-to-day work, as you can see how many bones there are. This is at Heathrow, at the freight sheds. We have a large team, and obviously there are a lot of things like you can see my colleagues on the right there, trying to see if these butterflies are banned or not. Training. We do a lot of training, not only with our own internal police, but also overseas. We have a lot of people come to Heathrow for training, as police, border guards, customs. This is very important to us. I think you've all mentioned this, is the publicity. Again, we've got involved with, that's one of our famous tennis players, Andy Murray. We use that as a high-profile star to help us, but also we use the media to publicise people when they're caught. We want to show that it's not worth it, that there are high sentences for smuggling, it's not worth doing. And I think one of the things that we try to say to people who are not interested is say, you realise this is organised crime. This is worth about £23 billion a year. But more important than that is that about 150 rangers a year are murdered. That's 3 a week. And people don't realise that people are losing their lives trying to protect animals. This is one, I don't know whether you remember, this was back in February. This was someone from Thailand who took this baby leopard to India. He got through all of the controls. But when he got to India, they realised that this bag was making funny noises, and so he was asked to open his bag, and there was a baby leopard. What I will say is some of the work that we're doing here, we currently have a project with Thai Customs where we're helping them to target and profile. In the past, they've been seen as more of a fiscal organisation, looking for false declarations, under declarations. We're helping them to look for narcotics, we're looking for wildlife and other things. We just had a course in Hanoi last week with our subject matter experts from London, from the wildlife trade, and in Malaysia a few weeks ago we had a 2-day conference sponsored by the High Commission. And again, all of this work is for Border Force for interdiction, but my colleague Andrew is here this evening from the embassy, and I know you've had dealings. Wildlife crime is transnational. As far as we're concerned, we work with our colleagues, especially our Australian colleagues and our international colleagues. We put a lot of money into this, but it is unfortunate by the time it comes to us that normally the animals are dead. But if we highlight that it's not worth it, that's our job.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you to all of our panellists. We're open for questions now. There's a microphone there. I might just start off with one basic thing, if I may, first, and that is CITES have banned or said they would like to see a ban on tigers in captivity. Why?
As basically CITES in 2007 issued a resolution that was signed by all the range states of tigers, agreeing that the illegal trade and that also that was too rampant, and also that the possession of tigers was too broad. So basically, it was proposed, I think, by the European community at that time to have this set, because all the range states agreed. Basically, CITES set up the resolution, but I have to make it very clear that a resolution under CITES is not binding. It's a resolution. It's basically like an MOU, but it's not a law. It's not binding. So basically, they can do whatever they want with it. And China is definitely in Geneva in August. I'm pretty sure that China will try to actually counter this and basically say, well, the breeding of tigers in captivity is a national issue, nothing to do with CITES. We can do it, and we will do it. So I'm pretty sure that that's going to be overturned. Okay,
and the belief in China, their reason for doing that is that those products are going to make sick people better, or people.
I guess first of all, that's what some people say. Basically, China does not like to be told by foreign countries what to do in their own country. I think that's probably the biggest point, but that's a political one. I'm not sure.
Yes, Tim.
The caveat on breeding of tigers is that outside of a conservation breeding program, so with formal zoos with sanctioned breeding programs, and there's international stud books for the different subspecies, that's allowed and that's encouraged as well to preserve these species. But given the leakage that has been proven from all of the captive breeding centres which are not part of these breeding programs, that's why the members of CITES agreed that it was a good idea to try to ban these unofficial zoos and farms.
Right. And in terms of, clearly this is an enormous problem internationally, up in China, but also in this part of the world. How bad is China Thailand? Where does Thailand rank in terms of what's going on numbers. It looks like Laos, that facility you showed in northern Laos, and some of those ones at Mukdahan or just across the river there in Laos, are quite significant in size in world scale.
I think China definitely has the largest number of tigers in captivity, and Thailand should be second. Laos will be probably third, and Vietnam fourth. India, for example, is a range state who has 0 breeding of tigers in captivity. I think there's more than 3,000, maybe 4,000 tigers in captivity in China alone. So even more, 5,000. So
I believe the largest captive population is actually in Texas. It's about 6,000 in Texas. But luckily, I think because of stricter law enforcement in America, they're not leaking into the market quite so often. So there's now about, 4 or 5 times more tigers in captivity than in the wild.
Okay, and they have very little value in a sense in that they're not deemed to be pure species?
That's correct. A lot of them in captivity are hybrids between several subspecies, and even with some research that's been going on recently that says there might only be 2 subspecies, none of these in captivity in these farms are any use for reintroduction to the wild, and that, as far as I know, has not been successfully managed anywhere from captive bred animals. There's a couple of experiments going on, but basically once they're out of the wild, that's the end of the story. They're not going back again. So the ones that are in the wild are the last remaining tigers, and if we don't preserve those, it's highly unlikely we'll be putting any back.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got a question up there.
Michael Mackey, freelance. Just to pick you up on your point about wilding, this has been talked quite a lot about in Britain, about rewilding. George Monbiot at The Guardian seems to think that the global warming can actually be solved by rewilding. What's the specific problem with rewilding that in the tiger context? Is it a behavioural problem that a tiger that's been born in captivity doesn't have the instincts to survive?
Edwin, who wants to take that?
I think tigers in captivity, first of all, making the kill is, I've seen tigers in captivity trying to make a kill, and most of them, well, I've never seen one doing it properly. They play with the prey, they bite it, but they won't make the kill. But I think the social structure of tigers in the wild, with having territories and running around from one territory, the males running from one territory to another, the females establishing a family somewhere, I think it's quite it's a bit of a culture that is. We see people talk about putting animals back to the wild. And for example, with elephants, I don't see really a problem. And elephants can find themselves something to eat, and eventually set up friendship with other elephants, and they could live in the wild, I think, quite easily if they are left alone. But with tigers, I think it's been tried twice. I think somebody tried it in South Africa. That wasn't a success at all. And I think in India, there's only one instance where a tiger actually was released back to the wild and survived more than 10 years. But that was a tiger that was taken out of the wild when it already was a year old or something like that. So I don't remember any story where tigers were being put back in the wild, but maybe in kind of a Jurassic Park setting it might work. I don't know. That's difficult. But
sorry, this was the question, well, one of the 2 questions I really had. There's incredible pressure on populations in the wild. Isn't the one way to protect the species to admit that tiger farming is nasty, but so's all factory farming? That this might be the one way to protect the species, that there isn't got to be the capability, the resources, maybe even in future the land, to support tiger populations. I know it's a heretical thought, but I have them.
This, the captive breeding of tigers has been debated for more than 20 years now. There's been a lot of effort put into forecasting how many would be required to sustain a market in China, and basically the figures don't add up. It's impossible. You just cannot have enough farms or breed enough. And it's expensive to breed these animals. It's cost prohibitive, you know. They want to have them till they're 18 months old before they slaughter them and settle the bones. It's much cheaper to go out and, you know, put a bullet in a gun and shoot a wild tiger. So it's counterproductive to have farms. This is why CITES, they spent an awful lot of time debating this. All of the experts around the world on sustainable breeding of animals. And it's something that's just not possible.
I'd like to add to that, actually, that in talks, in interviews with wildlife traders, we've seen, and their evidence is there actually, some of the wildlife traders, Ruertai, an infamous wildlife trafficker in Thailand who's been caught a few times, served jail a few times, and still, right now, I can promise you, still is in the illegal wildlife trade. He used to buy tigers from tiger farms in Chonburi, from Nakhon Nayok, from Bangkok, and used to export them to the Lao border or the Burma border. When he gets a phone call that a poacher in Hue Ka Keng or Kengkachan or anywhere else has shot a wild tiger and wants to sell it, he knows that he's going to pay a lot less for that wild tiger than he's going to pay for a tiger from a farm. And he knows at the same time that if the people that buying the tiger from him can see that this is a wild tiger, they'll pay him a lot more for that wild tiger. So eventually the farming is having a direct impact on the wild population. This is, I think, as long as we allow the captive breeding to continue, and we cannot count on proper enforcement, and this is a problem, corruption, proper enforcement, it's not going to work. The damage to the wild population will continue, it will actually increase.
That in a way answers the other question I had, which was about the economy of this. That you've said it was expensive to keep them till they're slaughterable, but then is it only the bones that they're farmed for? Nothing else from it can be commodified?
Yeah, I think about 10, 12, 13 years ago, we started to see more and more tiger corpses transported by illegal wildlife traders cut through the middle, basically cut right through the middle here. To take the organs out, we rot quite quickly. But then we were quite surprised to see that, because before that never happened, because the skin was so valuable until that time, but it became actually less important, less of an incentive for them. So yes, the skin has still some value, but not as a big rug anymore like it used to be in the past. Male and female tigers, the male tigers, their penises, they're worth a lot of money. Actually, a male tiger will fetch at least $1,200 to $1,500 more than a female one. So other parts than the bones are definitely valuable as well. Tiger cubs, I would say up to 10 years ago, there was no market for tiger cubs. The dead ones, even stillborn tiger cubs, were worthless. Right now they're going to wines in Vietnam, and they're completely supplying the Vietnam trade. So they find some value somehow for anything at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got another question. Yes?
Maybe two.
Can you tell us who you are? Sorry.
My name is Patrick Desmond, a member of the club, and I work and live here in Bangkok, Thailand.
Thank you.
My question is, or first I have a comment, is if we find that it's very difficult to control the poaching and the illegal killing of tigers in the wild, why not sustain tiger farms, at least as a stopgap measure to hold the population until we can figure out how to rewild or supplement the dwindling population in the wild? So why wouldn't we perpetuate tiger farms in that sense? And I understand the downside of that, but still it's a way to preserve the species in light of the tragic events in the wild.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am not sure will answer you correctly. Actually, the way of we are looking at the tiger farm and the conservation of the tiger in the naturalities. Actually, this issue is there are many factors involved on that. For the tiger farm in Thailand, mostly they are not our native species. Therefore, it's not a reason for the introduction of the breeding program for the conservation purpose. I think that's the first one. And yes, I may add up later. In case you.
I think when you look at the dynamics of commerce of money, first of all, I think protecting in situ will be cheaper. It will be less budget to actually protect the wild than setting up a breeding facility and taking all the expertise in and doing it all properly. And I think actually that will cost a lot more money than the in situ conservation, the animals in the wild. I think also the enforcement should be the tools, the enforcement, the laws that we have should be utilized to the maximum. That would actually also help. Thailand currently, well, we counted 1,998 animals, and of those, only 8 are actually Indo-Chinese tigers, the Panthera tigris corbeti, the one we find in Thailand. Actually, Thailand has 2 tiger species. The ones in the south are supposed to be Malayan tigers, south of the Isthmus of Kra. But basically, with only 8 in captivity currently, and they are luckily with the authorities, it's hardly a population with, I think, and even that we're not 100% sure they really are. That's been said that they are. But you want to start a captive breeding, a protection program with only a few, or maybe you can get some from zoos around the world with a dozen or 2. I think that cost is going to be so much, and it maybe not even work. Why would we start fixing, try to fix something that we can actually keep going in the wild? I think it is possible. Obviously, there are tiger populations growing in Thailand, and that is because people like Freeland are training the rangers over there, and because the enforcement is being stepped up, that takes money. But I think if we spend more money on that we don't have to spend anything on this captive breeding. I think it's probably also something that can be utilized, for example, in ecotourism in the future. How many people go see tigers in the wild in India? It's an amazing experience to see them. Maybe in the future that could be done in Thailand. That could actually bring in money for the conservation in situ. So I think the captive breeding, the ex situ conservation of wildlife is really, really last way out. And look what happened to the ex situ conservation in, for example, Malaysia with their rhinos. They had 8 or 9 in captivity. They got some zoonotic disease in there, and the last one died last week. I seriously think it's a disaster.
Can you say the cost is so high? Largely because it costs a bloody lot to feed them.
Well, you need to bring them up. They have the good, proper facilities. There needs to be people researching the development and everything. It's not going to be cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, I run a rescue facility with 900 animals at the moment, and you don't want to know my monthly bills. And honestly, I'm not even doing it up to the standard I would like to do it. And also believe that rescue work and breeding is a completely different issue. But I don't see why would we use Plan B when we have Plan A?
Can I just add a bit here as well? 30, 40 years ago in Thailand, there were crocodiles in the wild everywhere. And then somebody thought they'd start crocodile farming. Now there's about 600 crocodile farms, and there's probably about 5 crocodiles in the wild. Is that conservation?
I guess my comment is more or less that if the efforts to save the wild tigers fails, or is not as robust as everybody would like to believe, wouldn't Plan B, as you say, be a good alternative to sustain the species?
There are Plan Bs underway. Each of the subspecies have stud books, and there is captive breeding around zoos around the world to maintain a safety net of well-bred founder individuals that can maintain these subspecies.
And that's what I'm...
So it's already in place. It's just the farms that are making the problems.
One final comment, and I'll leave you with a question. I wish I could remember, I wish I could cite my authority, but I remember seeing, it was either National Wildlife or Wild Kingdom or something, where they rewild some cougars or leopards, and it was phenomenally successful in that these captive born cougars or whatever they were reintroduced to their natural habitat and picked up on their instinctive ability to sustain themselves with overabundance. In fact, the commentators were amazed that these captive just became a killing spree. They were killing not just to feed themselves, but just as a part of their instincts. So I can't say that that's the same as tigers, but it seems to be, being in the cat family, that we need to look at more efforts to that rewilding is not something that can't be done. And lastly, I'm sorry if I'm...
we need to wind it up. We've got a whole lot of people who are going to ask questions there.
And maybe everybody knows, but I came in here one time and I was at the Tiger Temple, and then I came back and it was gone. If anybody wants to speak to what happened there, maybe that's too long for this venue.
Does anyone...
The Tiger Temple.
Don't go there.
Do people want to know about the Tiger Temple?
That's a whole evening in itself.
Yeah. Okay, we'll okay.
Panchariat Singto, World Animal Protection. On Monday, our organization have some campaigns to sign petition with ID, 10,000 sign petition with ID for change in policy levels. We will submit, if we finish this campaign, we will submit to the parliament to change some law, because even the new wildlife protection that I've been showed to you is the DNP still have authority to give the permit to breeding the tiger in the captive. That is why that the project. My question is linked with this activity, because when we do this campaign, the sum of government officer ask us if we can ban on the breeding tiger in the captives. This one can link to the opportunity for the hunting. Is will increasing the hunting tiger in the wild or not? What do you think? Because some officers say they are concerned if we can ban captive tiger, that is opportunity for more hunting tiger in the wild or not?
Any of you get that?
Yeah.
You want to take that?
Yeah. I think we got the question. Basically, is there an influence between, if we remove the tiger farms, will it increase the pressure on the wild?
Okay,
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I got it.
So, in my view, I mean, there weren't any tiger farms here 20, 30 years ago, but there were tigers in the wild. You can draw your own conclusion from that. I think it's putting more pressure on the wild, not less. And actually, if there was more support for tigers in the wild, it would be more benefit for the country as well, because tourists want to go to a park with tigers. It's well documented that they're a draw and people want to go there. So it would benefit the national parks. They would have more revenue to be able to protect them.
In a period of, I think it was somewhere between 2010 and 2016, out of 120 tigers that were confiscated, 12 of them were proven to be from the wild. That's 10% out of the illegal trade that was confiscated, that was proven to be from the wild. So that's, in my opinion, that's enough pressure. That doesn't mean all these tigers came from the wild in Thailand. They could have come from Malaysia, from Sumatra as well, because Thailand used to be, and probably still is, a transit country for this trade. But it's currently existing. The threat to the wild population is currently existing. Whether that threat goes up a little bit for a short time or not, if we stop the breeding of tigers, yes or no, is also depending on how we enforce the laws. And the laws that are coming into effect in the next couple of months are basically strong enough. If you go for 8 years to jail or 10 years to jail for poaching tigers in Thailand, you won't be poaching for the next 8 to 10 years. And I think that will make a huge difference.
Very good, thank you.
Hi, Andrew Byrne, British Embassy. Thank you all as a panel for everything that you've said this evening. It's been really informative. Actually, Edwin, you've kind of started to answer my question. I was really shocked by what we saw in Tim's presentation, the way the wild tigers population has shrunk and shrunk, the geographical area they're inhabiting now being much, much smaller. We've talked a lot about the problems this evening. This is a transnational crime. What would you do, not just in Thailand, but across Asia, or at least ASEAN, to try and start solving this? What are the policies that we need to have in place, and how would you tackle it?
Over the last 20 years or so, there's been some very good initiatives across Southeast Asia to bring law enforcement agencies together. And now there's a much greater awareness in these agencies as well about what is the problem and what's needed to solve it. Unfortunately, I think that they've missed some opportunities in the past. They had a very good regional network called the ASEAN Wildlife Enforcement Network, and they had a program coordination unit here in Thailand that was able to bring people from not just Southeast Asia, but from Africa, South America together to share confidential law enforcement data, and also facilitate trainings for all these different officers. Last year, there was a meeting of the senior ministers in Naypyidaw in Myanmar, and they debated about what they needed, and they've gone round in a big circle, and they've decided they need to have some kind of coordination unit to bring together police, customs and wildlife departments to share this information. So I hope somebody down the line might help facilitate funding another program coordination unit like that. I don't know, but it's something that the ministers from Southeast Asia have already said they want. So what more can I say?
I'd like to add to that when Christopher was actually showing that clip of that leopard that got confiscated in Chennai in February, I've been in touch with CITES in Bangkok and CITES in Delhi and the authority in Chennai for months now to get that cub to be returned back to Thailand so you can actually have some checks on it and find the origin of the cub. I think we pretty well know where it came from, but we have no case in Thailand because there's no evidence. Thai law is quite significantly, we have no case. We know the man's name, we know his telephone numbers, we know where he hang out and what he's been doing, but until now in India, the man has not been interrogated yet. He left on bail the next day after he got arrested at the airport, and interrogation didn't take place. The leopard cub is in the zoo in Chennai at the moment and probably will never go back to Thailand. And it's similar there that the information is not being exchanged, the data, the intelligence. We got a shipment of about 160 pangolins 2 years ago in Laos at the rescue center that we were running at that time. 2 Thai people were arrested on the cars that were taking these animals from the border, Bangkan to Vientiane province, to take them up north. They got stopped. When we contacted Thai authorities a couple of weeks later and asked them what they found, they said, well, they never heard about it. Laos never informed the Thais. 3 tigers were taken over the border about 10 months ago from Thailand into Laos. The military picked up the 3 carcasses and never saw the tigers again. Again, here were Thai people involved. There was no communication between the Lao government and the Thai government. And I've been very critical about this in the past. Tim knows very well, because in the old days, there was actually some involvement of NGOs in there. There was traffic. There was at that time, I think you were still Wild Aid, heavily involved with it. But there were so many other NGOs that had information that would like to share. And I think also we're also the ears and the eyes in those kind of meetings. And it would be really good if this kind of system is set up between governments, that also there will be involvement from third parties like NGOs. So we can assist, help, but also put pressure on cases like this, because there's hardly any follow-up, and that's a pity. I think that's a missed opportunity.
I was just going to say why India have had dramatic success. Can you explain why? In terms of protecting numbers of tigers?
Legislation is quite strong.
Well, they decided, it started a long time ago with Project Tiger, with Indira Gandhi, and they invested a lot of money. And then because of complacency, they had a big crash in the number of tigers in the wild, and it was a big wake-up call. And they decided they shouldn't lose their national symbol. And I believe right now, wildlife sanctuaries or tiger reserves in India get $1 million a year budget each. So investment, if you want to keep it, you've got to spend the money, and the Indian government have decided they want to keep their national symbol, and they're investing the resources to keep it.
And they got no farms.
And they've shut the farms down.
And they got no farms.
Fantastic. Oh, well. Please, Andrew.
I mean, a quick comment on that as someone who tries to follow this stuff too. I do wonder if geography plays a part. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in Southeast Asia is small countries and multinational gangs who slip across borders very easily, and tracking those multinational gangs because of the lack of coordination across borders is a massive problem. In India, a lot of the tigers are actually not that close to borders, and you have a sort of easier problem in a lot of cases because you're managing it in just one country. But if I can ask one further question of this panel, and I know this one may be one that you want to be circumspect about answering. Thai government has done a lot recently to try and improve regulation. We've got the new law coming in, but we've also got a new government coming in. What would you say are the best things that this government could do to continue to tackle this problem?
Okay. I think everyone can say as well. Currently, as Edwin said, that we just enact of the new Wildlife Conservation Act. This act is more improved in order for update in different aspects, because the old law we have been used I think over 30 years, nearly 40 years maybe, and then this one just just last month, 27 years, yes, sorry, it's not nearly 30. That's the first thing we have, and then the new government is really challenging for them. Right now they have what we call a national reform agenda in the national agenda, where they have a different committee from a different aspect. One of the reform committee is about the conservation of natural resource and environments. They will develop of those strategy how they can reform. So right now it's like they keep the time frame for 20 years at least to reform for this aspect. And then when we're looking at the national practice on the natural resource right now, it's quite in Thailand I think it's more increasing awareness on the conservation of natural resource, and many of the community they are involved with the management of the parks and involved in the other conservation activities. And we have a lot of cases, and then not just Wildlife Conservation Act that is being enacted for the new one, but community forestry also has been enacted as well. So those things is more important for the structure on the conservation. The problem is that I think the Thai government, the new ones, need to collaborate well with the ASEAN country. How we can have a very good and strong network to protect of the transboundary of the trafficking. Right now, even though from the other regions, the wildlife part is come through to the Thailand via Suvarnabhumi airport, or sometimes came along the border from the South Thailand through to the Mekong River, Thai-Lao border, something like that. So if we have some more case to more collaboration at the regional level, I think that's good. Anything?
Yeah. With the new law passing, actually, I'm one of the few foreigners actually in Parliament that sits on a chair there as an honorary advisor to the Parliamentary Committee, Natural Resources, Environment and Animal Welfare. So it's been last 3 years that I've been doing that, and the first couple of weeks when I went there, I was quite, didn't know really what to do. I've been living in Thailand for 29 years. I can speak, read and write the language properly, but sitting as a foreigner in the Thai government there was a bit of a weird situation. Every now and then I had to really the new law has passed, and that has taken a long time. I mean, even Pim is here from Freeland, who's been in the drafting committee of that law as well. I was there as well. It took 2 years of drafting with the DNP, and this was already quite special that NGOs were invited to actually help and draft this law. I was actually even special to see that wildlife traders, legal wildlife traders, were not even invited to these meetings. It was actually it was a good deal. That the law passed at the end took longer than we expected, but it passed. But I don't believe that any new laws will pass in the next year. I think the coalition is too weak. They don't have enough of a majority. I think putting too much pressure on passing more laws, I don't think it's going to happen. However, there's a good thing here. After this new Wildlife Preservation Act, we need ministerial laws to arrange, to organize, to set standards. And that is something that the minister with his team can do. And I think if I would like to push the government for anything, I would like to see quickly proper standards, ministerial laws being passed that support this law, and then proper enforcement with it. And if we can get that, I think we already have a great deal, because, as I said, I don't think this government has enough power to make really big steps, given the coalition parties.
Okay, we've got another question here. Thank you very much, Edwin. That's interesting.
Hi, my name is Ken from Bird Conservation Society, and I'm a lawyer. So just following the question on law and governance, I think I would address the whole panel, everyone on the panel. What's the role of DNP in this conservation? 2 points that puzzle me the most is that given the Thailand's long-standing tiger research, but Tim said that there's no official data on the wild tiger population in Thailand. That's like very interesting to me. And another point is that all these facilities that you have shown us, it's clear that there's a lot of leakage and there's a lot of irregularities that, I mean, it's not very difficult to see, and DNP is the one who grant the permits to these facilities. Isn't there any like routine inspections or sanction when there's like a violation of any conditions, something like that? Thank you very much.
I'll go back to a few years, 2001, 2002, a huge amount of orangutans were being smuggled into Thailand, into a zoo in Bangkok, Safari World. They had a zoo permit. They were illegally importing lots of orangutans illegally and other kind of wildlife. They were caught red-handed. Animals were confiscated. They never lost their zoo permit. They never went to court. I cannot remember one case where a zoo actually was caught illegal trafficking or illegal possession and actually lost the zoo license. I can't think of one of them. Even the Tiger Temple, where the gentleman has left the building, but even the Tiger Temple was found to be illegally trading wildlife. There was enough evidence. Animals were disappearing. the cases never ever went further than the prosecutor. And the prosecutor basically says he has no case. I mean, this is what happens all the time. But what basically is happening, you have the regulators, the DNP, also doing all the checks. They're everything. And I think it would be much better if there would be something like what you have in most other countries. Maybe the livestock department really checks on the welfare of animals and animal welfare standards and on medical issues. And that there will be a special unit of animal inspectors that are properly trained and actually know when animals are suffering, when they actually know when something is wrong. You read the newspaper article yesterday in The Nation about the Phuket Zoo. People went in and they said, oh, no crime was committed and no animals were suffering. Yeah. We all seen the videos, come on. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation that the Department of National Parks is caring for the animals in the wild. There's also regulating the trade, the possession, and then checking on the welfare as well. It's a bit too much for one. I think it is actually time to split that up and actually have special units on this. And I think also the illegal wildlife trade should be basically should be enforced by a special police unit. We have a special police unit, the National Resources and Environmental Crime Division. However, when they have a case, they go to a normal police station who then take over the case and take it to the prosecutor and to the provincial court, which is ridiculous. They should go to an environmental court because these people know what they're doing, they know that facts. So maybe I like to add that to the requirements from this common government. Set up something like that. Set up something like a special police unit, prosecutor unit, and a court that actually addresses cases on national resources and environment, because it's really necessary.
Very good. We're just going to wind up shortly, folks. Richard, do you have a question?
My name is Richard Barrow. My area of interest is in tourism. A number of countries around the world have banned animals in shows and in tourism in general. Do you think that's going to happen in Thailand within our lifetime? And secondly, if that's going to happen, what's the logistics of that happening? How is it going to happen? How can you close down places like Siricha Tiger Zoo and Smatrakan Crocodile Farm? And what happens to the animals, basically?
Can I go first? And then
You can always go first.
Yes, in the world, approximately 40 countries now, they are banned on the show of the animals. And when we looking to the Thailand, actually we're working for the protecting of animal and promote of animal welfare. We would like to see Thailand to follow those 40 countries as well, to ban on the show of the animals. However, our country, I can say that the law enforcement is very weak actually, and particularly with if the poor people go to jail very easily actually. And for the case of the rich people, for example, the case for hunting of the black panther, that is take I think nearly 3 years now. So it take quite long, and sometimes it might not happen like poor people. So the case of law enforcement and is very weak here, and then we are separate looking of the for example, Wildlife Protection Act is a jurisdiction under the DNP National Park, but the Prevention of Animal Cruelty Act, that is under the Livestock Development Department. But DLD, the Department of Livestock Development, they have the jurisdiction over of the Prevention of Animal Cruelty Act. But this Prevention Animal Cruelty Act also is not when we at the history before they announce of this act, we propose a lot of things. We expect that the Prevention of Animal Cruelty Act will be is very new law, and then it can protect animal and can cover in different aspects. It's like a big tree. We have a different section, when go through the government and parliament is like a bonsai tree, you know, it's been cut out a lot of things, so many things has been cut away. So that's why it's still not satisfied for us right now, and that's why there's still a lot of happening. I think the pressure from international also is very good in terms of the demand, how we can reduce the demand, not to support to the venue, right, like Silacha Tiger Zoo, because of most of the tourists they are come from other country like China country, like India, and they are doing marketing very well for their business. Each day they came with a big bus when a lot of the tourist group come to their facilities. So if we're working on reduce the demand and increase awareness, those things, I think it can reduce in the future. So while working on the policy to improve is quite take long too. So I think you may have things to add.
Well, when I started this work about 20 years ago, I thought it was very clear to me: no bull hooks, no elephant riding, no selfies. 20 years ago we didn't do selfies, but you know, whatever. I think you're talking about people's livelihood here. There's people that have for generations had elephants, and these elephants are not changing, but the dynamics of commerce, of businesses is changing. Our culture, our community is changing, and I think just to say that you got to stop, without being the advocate of the devil here, but just to say that you got to stop riding elephants, stop using the bull hook, you got to do this and that, everything. It all sounds great, but what are you going to do with 3,500 captive elephants in Thailand? How are you going to keep that sustainable? How are you going to make sure that these elephants are being cared properly for, being fed, and that the people actually that have these elephants can sustain themselves as well? Is a very difficult thing, and I'd love to see once an open discussion between all these sides, because stopping this trade, yes, okay, great, but what are you going to do with these 2,000 tigers? What are you going to do with these 3,500 elephants and all the other animals and in other countries, different species? I mean, you see the dancing bears in India, they've fixed this. There were some organizations giving people a few $1,000s for the bears and said, well, here's some money to start up a different business, go ahead. Some of them were successful, some were not. But what are you going to do? In Thailand, elephants need a lot of care. The people, some of them are actually, whether you believe this or not, actually do love their animals and really see the elephants as a part of their family. The more I've been working with elephants over the last few years, the more complex it gets for me. But I think, Richard, you're talking about when it can stop in our lifetime, yes or no? I'm afraid not, because these elephants live long. I mean, I remember a lady coming up to me once with a baby gibbon that she bought. It was 2 years old. She said, I'm bored of this gibbon. I don't want it any longer. Can you please take it to your rescue center, because it pisses, it shits all over the place. I can't stand it any longer. And I just found out yesterday that gibbons can come up to 45 years of age. So, you know, like elephants living up to 60, 70 years, and I don't see it here. But I do believe that if we find an alternative for this, and if we can find an alternative, I've set up a rescue facility in Petbury where our elephants roam around free in an actually safe environment, because I don't want to go to what's happening in some rescue centers either. We have had so many people being killed by elephants, even founders of a rescue center recently, staff members in another one in Chiang Mai. This is all tragic and unnecessary. So we need to find alternatives for these people, safe, if possible, where people and the animals both actually benefit from the change. And I was in Pattaya in a couple of elephant camps recently with Tom visiting, and I remember that people paid 600 baht per person, 1,200 baht for a couple to ride an elephant for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and that elephant used to go around the area. There were some trees around. But Western people are not going anymore, and right now there's Chinese people going there. The elephant now walks around 200 meters in a circle. There's some guy under a tree making a photograph, and for 50 baht each, they're doing it now. So, again, advocate of the devil, what did we really help here?
I think Edwin's hit on an important point there. I mean, from the West, ethically, many tourists are quite wise now and they don't want to have a tiger selfie. But looking at those inbound tourist figures from Eastern Europe and Eastern Asia and China, they're just going up and up and up. And I think we'll see the amount of tiger farms and other sites utilizing wildlife like this is just going to go up and up and up as well, unless somehow we can engage the Thai government and point out that this is not really a satisfactory way to use wildlife like this, and maybe encourage them more to steer the tourists towards the national parks where communities can benefit from tourism, from selling handicrafts or from gate money or stuff like that.
Okay, I add more a bit. Actually, I was talking about the review of the demands. Right now, World Animal Protection worldwide working with different travel agencies, and we have over 200 travel agencies that sign pledge with us to review of the demands, support of the venue that use abuse of animals in their facilities. And yes, from the Europeans and from Australia, New Zealand, and from America, we are not concerned those tourists because of from our survey that there are increasingly of the animal-friendly tourists. But from here nearby, as you said, like China, when you go to Phuket or go to Chiang Mai or Safari World, they are lining up for riding of elephants, and the parking area is really big bus, big vans parking, but the way the elephant living is very small. And yes, we also developing of the elephant-friendly venues with the venue that they are volunteer to working with us. So support them changing from show conventional venue to more friendly venue and high welfare venues. For the case of the tiger, this is another case that where we focusing on the policy to the first one is for the demand, and the second one is on the policy works, and then increase awareness for people more understand the issue of when you visit to the captive tiger like this. For the policy, we expect that it might take long, but we working on that too. So thank you.
Okay, this is the last question of the night, and can I just Richard, the manager, Richard, we need a beer for Chris here, okay?
Anything
as long as it's fast.
Okay, Dominic, please.
Yes, well, Edwin's actually answered the question I was going to bring up, which is if you succeed in closing these farms, what on earth do you do with all the creatures inside them? So it seems that you don't have an answer. And this has been a thoroughly depressing evening, I think, for most people. And there's a sort of sense of helplessness that, you know, we see something appalling happening, a natural heritage just being thrown away. But maybe we could be a bit more positive. What is the most constructive thing the private sector could do to contribute to resolving this problem? The private sector, private money.
Well, I think the private sector, and we're talking here about also about travel agents and bloggers, and I think if you try to promote the ethical places, the better places, and even when places are maybe not that good, but actually making an effort to make a difference, to make a change, to actually support these changes and support these places. Because I remember about 2 years ago we had a meeting in Vientiane about the closure of all the tiger farms in Laos. The Minister of Natural Resources went to South Africa to the CITES conference, and he must have been drunk that night, but he came out and said, I'm going to close down all the tiger farms in Laos, and we're going to stop having tiger farms at all. 4 months later, we were invited for a meeting, and they asked me to set up a tigers rescue center for about 700 to 800 tigers, and I basically told them it's impossible. you cannot have a rescue center for 800 tigers. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to work. And they came up with lots of other things. And to be very honest, I thought it was better to have a period of time of about 2 or 3 years to slowly let it go, and maybe some of these tigers still ending up in the trade, but at least slowly, getting the numbers down, and maybe end up with a place of about 50, 60 tigers over there that you could use for ecotourism and awareness or something like it. I think in Thailand, as I said earlier, with the numbers being so high when it comes to tigers or elephants in this case, I just don't see that we can just close everything down. It won't work. So
can I add on to there? I have a solution for it. Tigers only live for about 15 years. If we sterilize them, we have a phase out of 15 years, and that will be the problem finished. Instead of it rising and getting more and more, the people know that they're going to have to change their business. Within 15 years, they'll have had to find another alternative.
This is what I suggested 3 years ago. About 3 years ago, we were sitting here talking about the tiger temple closure. And when the Department of National Park says we're going to take all the 148 tigers out of the temple, I was like, where are you going to take them? And they built a few cages here and there in 2 different facilities. And those cages were just not big enough. They were too close to each other. They were actually 4 by 8 meters, so that's 32 square meters per tiger. And in some cases, 2 tigers went into one enclosure. We're now 3 years later. And, a third of those tigers have passed away by now. So more than a third. The problem was that at that time, I suggested take the young tigers away. That's where they make the most money, and that's where actually the most problems occur with. And all the other ones, spay them and let them stay. You don't have to take care of all those tigers. You don't have the huge budget, and also it will slowly die out by itself. But unfortunately, that's not what happened.
The question was, what can the private sector do? I would say support projects around protected areas that give some income for local communities, that give them a purpose for keeping the tigers in the wild. There are these types of activities going on in Bangladesh and India, and local communities make a lot of money from having this resource on their doorstep and all of the problems that go along with it. So, private sector, please fund projects at parks, or you can fund projects through NGOs that they support local communities.
Also, the role of the private can support of the ethical venues or the friendly venues, because of when we discussion with the conventional venue, mostly they are concerned on the security of the income if they change from riding elephant to more ethical elephant venue. They are concerned they will lose their customer, and when they change the program to the care program and how they can find those customers, I think this is some example that the role of the private can be support of those venue that more care of the animals, and then ban to the destination attraction that abuse of animals.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. If you could put your hands together for our guests. I realise it's been a little bit of a long night, but one thing I would say is these 3 gentlemen at the end, at the far end, they work for wonderful organisations. If you want to do something good, go down and visit Edwin's Lodge, I Love Fance, down in Petbury. You can stay there, you can have a swim, you can see an excellent facility. But I'd also say Freeland, Tim's organisation, are doing wonderful work, and so are the World Animal Protection Group. So keep an eye out for them, support them, and come back and see us again. Thank you very much, everyone.